I'm really pleased to welcome back to the show a man who is assembling his strongest team ever for the Cheltenham Festival and struck yet again on a Saturday afternoon with a very exciting young horse called My Drogo. He is, of course, Dan Skelton. Dan, good morning.
Morning, Nick.
You must have been very pleased yesterday. Let's start with the most recent success for the stable. My Drogo looked like a horse firmly on the up.
Yeah, I mean, he's just a fantastic, progressive young horse. He only debuted in October in a bumper at Cheltenham. He went off 50-1, which we didn't really feel advertised what we felt of him at the time. But that's an irrelevance. That was a bumper. But since then, he's gone on to be unbeaten over hurdles. I thought yesterday was a very accomplished performance, and he gave away a Class 1 penalty. So, to win these graded races is a hard job to do, but to win them under a graded penalty is quite authoritative, and he's going the right way. We've minded him. Mentally we've kept him away from the sort of like potential, not downfalls that we could face, but we've made sure that we've treated him like a sort of a slightly fragile young horse. If you notice, at 4 out yesterday, he took a bit of a flyer at the hurdle 10 strides after being bumped, and that's what he's like a little. You have to be a little cautious with him and treat him quite gently, because he will come alive for you. Once you've lit the fuse, you can't put petrol on it with it. Put water on it, if you know what I mean. You've got to be really careful not to get him overexcited.
What was the thinking behind taking him to Kelso yesterday and maybe not going to the big festivals?
Well, I think the intention is to go to Aintree, and I've been really impressed with him as the season's progressed, how physically he's actually developed. He's not wilted, he's actually blossomed. And we don't weigh our horses, because I sometimes find that with jumps horse it can be a little misleading. But if we were to weigh them, I'd say he's a better physical horse now than he was in the autumn, which is great, because a lot of horses, as the season sort of goes on, they drop condition, and it's a hard job to post Christmas time keep them in their best shape. So I've been really impressed with how he's done that. But really, the main reason for missing Cheltenham is, if you run in a race like the Supreme, where there's a lot going on, going down to 2 out, and a lot of jostling for position, I just feel like he would be capable of doing what he did 4 out yesterday. Sort of half taking his mind off what's going on around him because of a bit of bumping and pushing around, and we just didn't want to put him in that. We didn't want to put him at risk. Basically, we wanted to protect him and shield him from that. And I think the results are showing that we're doing the right thing at the moment. And next year as a chaser, that's really top of the agenda.
And this has been a fantastic season for you with so many really talented horses coming through, lots of youngsters coming through that you could get excited about. Are you doing a lot differently? Are you a better trainer now than you were last year or the year before, do you think?
Well, yes. I mean, everybody evolves, and it doesn't matter if you're a trainer, you're a jockey, a presenter, whoever it is. You learn from experience. You learn from what went right, from what went wrong, and I think confidence as well. That you get good horses and good results around you. That confidence then leads to more of the correct decisions, and that your staff believing in the system and the decisions that you're making. So yeah, I'm definitely a different, probably better trainer. But then so are all the competition. Everything's evolving. People are always getting better and sort of finding new ways to do things. And I think when you've got really good horses around you, you have to really wake up and recognise that. And I think I spoke to you at the start of the season and said that we felt that this was the right time to concentrate a little bit more down the quality rather than quantity route. And I'm just delighted that it's paid off. You can say all you want, but actions speak louder than words, and we're just delighted that the actions have backed up those words back in the autumn.
And how about your own sort of temperament for the job? Are you better equipped for it now? Do you find the pressures of the sport easier to cope with?
I think Yes, I do. I think that's for a number of different reasons, though. With success comes expectation, which has to be managed personally as well as socially. And then, of course, the actual stresses of the job, of being around horses, of things not going right, of races being lost when they might have been won, and things like this week we had two fallers that perhaps would have won, and it didn't. And you as you get more experience and older, you learn how to deal with things like that. That's just an example. I think the support of family and friends and the owners who understand what the game is all about and how sort of stressful it is. I think, yes, I'm definitely better equipped to do it now. And I wish there was almost a guidance book when I started and says this is what you're going to face. These are the problems you're going to have, and here's a little bit of help of how to deal with it. There wasn't that book. I was lucky. I had Paul Nicholls' number. I could ring him if I ever thought, what do I do here? And I've got my dad and my wife and my brother to call on. But you ask a very sort of poignant question there, because it's something that I feel is hard. It is hard to manage, and there are times when I think with every sportsman or woman or businessman or woman or anybody in the world, where things can feel like they're too much, or you're not living up to expectations, and your mind can play tricks on you, and it is a difficult job to do when things are going well, let alone when things aren't. So I think hopefully with a bit of maturity I've got better at it, but I think there's always room for improvement in that area, and I certainly do my best to conduct myself the best, but at times wish I could have done better.
It's interesting what you say. I mean, is it fair to say that your expectation bar was something that you set very high for yourself? I mean, a lot of people expect you to do well because you were well known. You had a profile from Paul's, and obviously you had a profile because of the success that your family had as well. But you seem to put a lot of pressure on yourself.
Yeah, I did, and I do, and I will continue to do so, because I feel that you have to be, as leading the team that I do, you have to have a winning mentality. You have to exude that confidence. You have to exude that feeling of being a winner and wanting to win, and that being the objective. There's lots of little different pieces along the way that can't be ignored and can't be forgotten and have to be taken into consideration. But I set the bar very, very high for myself, and sometimes I fall short of that and I disappoint myself. Sometimes I fall short of that and I've let somebody else down. But I think it's okay to say that the bar is so high, because everybody wants, whether you're an owner, a breeder, a jockey, a member of staff at the yard, you really want to know that everybody is trying their best, and that the leadership is trying to attain at least the highest level. So it's a bar that I put there, and I've never lowered it. And ultimately, if you say, well, what's the ambition? I've never made any secret that I'd love to be champion trainer one day, and that bar will stay up there for as long as it can be. I will always try to attain that. I may not achieve it, but that's where it is, and I'm happy to say that. It may sound arrogant to some people, but it's almost like a little bit of a focus point in the distance where you can, that's a constant, never moving object in the distance that we are trying to get towards. Step by step, that is where we're trying to get towards.
In terms of readying your team for the next 9 days, how much of the work is now done? How much more can you do to enhance your chances of competing with the Mullinses and the Nicholses and the Hendersons next week?
Well, I think the vast majority has been done, and now it's just the finishing touches. There's a little bit more schooling to do, maybe one more piece of work. Just keeping them healthy and they're fit now. You're not going to improve any fitness at this point. Some horses, All Mankind would be a good example of a horse who you have to keep really busy up to the 11th hour. You have to do lots and lots and lots with him. Roxana would be the complete opposite. You have to just try and keep her fresh up to the last moment. So you've got to, sort of work with your horses. And you've got to remember, I feel at this point, a horse can only be 100% fit. There's no such thing as 101 or 102. A horse can only be 100% fit. Trying to find that extra 2% fitness, you're going to start going over the top, and you're going to get a negative reaction from your horses for doing that. So, I think one thing that experience does do for you is it just tempers you a little on the eve of these big festivals and these big days and the big targets of the year. The experience does tell you, okay, it's another day, it's another race. This horse doesn't know that it's Cheltenham or Aintree or the Grand National or whatever. This horse just thinks it's going to run again. So you mustn't take it out of that comfort zone that you know that it can perform well in and has been performing well in all season. So you've just got to basically hold your nerve and just know that your horses are well, trust in them, trust in your staff, and hopefully, touch wood, they all get there in 9 days' time.
Now, Dan, I walked you into trouble earlier on in the season without realising it when you and I were chatting on my daily podcast, and we were talking about some of the horses out of the Dublin Racing Festival, and you inadvertently used the word freebie, and you probably wished you'd never spoken to me that week because you were then on the receiving end of a whole barrage of abuse on social media. But it's probably worth drawing a line under that by sort of clarifying what you meant in terms of preparation of horses going for the meeting from Ireland and from the UK. Yeah,
it doesn't matter which country you're in. What I was trying to get to, and I felt it wasn't sort of in print. It didn't sound like it. It certainly didn't feel like it sounded when it came out of my mouth. But I was just getting to the point that really any horse in any country, any jurisdiction, if it doesn't have a physically hard race in the build-up to its biggest day, it is at an advantage because effectively you're going to the biggest day with the fullest tank of fuel you could have. So I was making an example of Willie's horses, under your lead, your leading question about that was Willie's horses in particular. I was just saying that by virtue of them being so good, they were hard to beat anyway. They were then becoming double hard to beat because, they were getting non-hard physical races. They were still beating Grade 1 horses, and they were incredible breeze through in the semis, and he's even harder to beat now because he's fresh. So that was all I was getting at, and it doesn't matter if it's my horse or Willie's horse or Paul's horse or Nicky's horse. It doesn't matter whose it is. If you have a seamless build-up and a race where there is so little, well, not so little, but where a race where as little as possible is taken out of the legs in preparation for the big day, it makes them harder to beat, and that is a fact.
What I love about talking to the very best trainers and the trainers who have a lot of success is their absolute belief in their horse's ability to perform on a given day, even if the odds suggest it's unlikely. I spoke to Nicky Henderson at some length just by the paddock yesterday. By the time I'd finished talking to him, I was completely convinced that Altior was going to win the Queen Mother Champion Chase. Your old boss, Paul Nicholls, by the time I'd spoken to him, I was convinced he was going to have about 5 or 6 winners. Are you, given that you're a sort of generation younger than them and a generation and a half, junior to somebody like Nicky Henderson, for example, do you look at them and feel quite amazed by the enthusiasm and the relish they still have for this, even though they've been doing it for decades?
Well, they're brilliant. They're masters at their trade, and they're leaders. They are leaders of their team. And I've spoken to a lot of different people about that attitude that you've pointed out. And it's, if you're a believer, it can happen. It doesn't matter what you are. If you're a believer, you have got more chance of it happening than if you're a non-believer. It's tiny, tiny margins. If you believe it can happen, then what percentage is that worth to a person that doesn't believe it can happen? And you've got to get people rallied around you. And it's. I feel like a lot of the time it's a tactic, but also a lot of the time it is plain belief that you believe these horses might win these races or can win these races. And it doesn't matter. Like, I spoke to my dad about it. He rode a horse in the Beijing Olympics called Russell. Russell was a good jumper. He wasn't in Big Stars or Arco's league, but he was a good jumper. And Dad had a good warm-up round on him. And the first round, I think, of the first round of the individual had gone quite well, and the team had gone quite well. And he rang me up and he said, you know what, I think there's an outside chance we get a medal with the team, And I was thinking, no, there isn't, but I love your belief. And, it happens a lot that those jockeys, they leave the paddock on a 33-1 shot. By the time they get down to the start, they've got to start believing that it's possible, because, they've got to go out there and do their best. And, I've got a lot of respect for it. And sometimes, I think social media and that, they'll pick up on this positivity and pick holes in this positivity, with almost reality reinforced by price or by form. But that's not what trainers mean when they give positive updates and think their horses can win. We're not price sensitive or form sensitive at that point. We've got to believe in our horses going to these races. So, I fully embrace it. I'm a believer myself. Of course I am. I've got to be. And I think it's good for the team. I think it's really good for the team. And a lot of banter comes off the back of it as well. Like, people know that me and Paul get on really well, and, he'll tell me he's going to win, and I'll say, well, I'm glad you're in it, because we needed a lead for the race, and, that type of thing. So it adds an interesting angle to it, that everyone thinks that they can win.
And that is completely embodied by the story of Nube Negra, because not only is he the horse that your dad picked up from Spain in the unlikeliest of circumstances, you believe in this horse so much you've even gone and bought the sire. It's like Remington. I liked it so much I bought the company. It's a totally new venture. Gracie, my wife, and Nick Pearce, they're in charge of that. I'm very much still a trainer, but it's an interesting angle. And what with this year's travel problems to the continent and others, we thought that he'd be a little asset to at least our brood mares and a few of our owner breeders. And we believe in him as a sire. And you can see the quality that Nube Negra has. His size, his scope, he's fast, he's brave. We like everything about him, and I'm just really looking forward to the champion chase with him for so many reasons now. And Gracie had a great interest in what we do anyway, because she's intrinsically involved in the racing business anyway. But I can tell you now, her interest has trebled since he's arrived. So we're going to be able to hear Grace screaming when Nube Negra wins the champion chase from your base in Warwickshire.
I said there's no doubt.
Is he going to?
I think he's a great chance. Yeah, there you go. Bit of belief for you.
Is he your best chance?
I think if the ground was good to soft on Wednesday, I'd say yes. He nearly is our best chance. I've analysed the race in a lot of different ways, not by competition, but just by the way that the race is run, how a champion chase is run. And I just feel that he's got that speed. If the ground is really, really, is decent, and it allows him to travel with ease, and he's not having to use up any fuel on the way around. He gets a good round of jumping. He could turn into 2 out with a relatively full tank of fuel, and by that point, it really is game on. It's a champion chase. You've got to go and jump well, and things have got to go well for you. Azertia dropped his back legs in a water jump there once, and his chance was gone. And that's the margins. Another 2 inches, and he'd have jumped that jump, and his chance would have still been there. But those are the fine margins of a race like any championship race, to be honest with you. So, if it goes according to plan on the way round, I think he's got an outstanding chance, because he's the young horse. He's a progressive horse. I don't have any fears about Cheltenham for him. I feel he stamped superiority over Altior at Kempton, and I know Cheltenham's a different track, but I feel that's what it is going into it. And he looks as best as good as I can have him. I couldn't have him any better.
I know I need to let you go, but I felt a bit down in the dumps about the Cheltenham Festival at the beginning of this show. I feel quite excited about it now after talking to you.